All right, Ethan, thank you so much for joining here. So for those of you who don't know, Ethan is the chief evangelist at a company called BombBomb. I actually used to work at BombBomb, which is how we know each other. And BombBomb is a tool that allows you to send video emails. A better way to communicate professionally, grow relationships, grow sales, everything. But what we ran into all the time is that a lot of people would purchase the software and be very uncomfortable putting themselves on camera. So Ethan spent the last number of years kind of in this world of video, of confidence, of authenticity, of vulnerability, of fear, discomfort, and helping people to achieve that level of comfort they need to use the product effectively. So we're going to be talking today about kind of discomfort on camera, right? Where does it come from? What's the psychology behind it? Maybe what are some hacks of how to get more confident? But really, we're going to have a chance to really go deep on this topic with Ethan because, again, he spent the last number of years so fully immersed in this world. So without further ado, thank you so much, Ethan, for joining me today.
Yeah, I love what you're doing here. I think it's cool that that you're pursuing these conversations and looking to kind of get these ideas out, because the more people we can get comfortable, I'm of the sincere and deep belief that our lives and our businesses will be better when more people are comfortable being themselves on camera in their communication.
Yeah, absolutely with you there. So I guess as kind of a kickoff question here, one thing I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on. Everyone who wants to use video experiences the same surface level discomfort that they usually express as, I don't like the way I look. I don't like the way I sound, right? I'm not beautiful enough. I'm too old. I'm too fat. My voice is too scratchy, whatever it is. That's kind of a surface level thing. I don't think we need to explore that too much further. That's pretty straightforward. But what I've found from these conversations on the podcast, from, of course, working with customers back when I was at BombBomb, is that there's more to that discomfort than that. That's what presents on the surface. That's what people always say. But underneath the hood, there's a lot more that's causing the discomfort other than just, I don't like the way I look and sound. Have you found that to be true? And if so, what are some of those things causing the discomfort?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I would bottom line the discomfort as, and you already said it a little bit in the introduction, is this idea of vulnerability. I call, and for folks who are listening, if you're not familiar, what we're typically talking about here and where I've spent most of my time is in kind of casual conversational videos, kind of like video voicemails or similar, like not high production value, just really simple, casual in place of what would otherwise be 2 or 3 paragraphs of text. And so, um, I'll go the long way around. So we do an immersion. Like when we get X number of new employees at BombBomb, we round them all up across departments, and they just do a day, like a deep dive with leaders of different departments, and they understand how the company works together, and they become a bit of a cohort, like new to the organization. And so I've been doing the marketing conversations for a while, and one of the first sessions I did, this is a couple of years ago now. I don't know if you remember Paul Jones, brilliant visual artist among other talents, and he asked a question. I always save time for Q&A. And so he asked a question, hey, what is our biggest impediment to growth here at BombBomb? And I told him straight up, it's this, what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
And it's human mindset, human comfort on camera is our single biggest impediment to growth, because you and I have both seen it over and over again. And I bring it down to vulnerability, which I know you're well read on Brene Brown, as am I. And her definition, of course, is that experience of living in risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure. It's that feeling we get in risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure. And so you really have all 3 of those in play when you turn the camera on. And really it's, you mentioned, some of the things that we tell ourselves, and those are legitimate voices, and some of that is practical, and we can get into this too. I'd be surprised if you didn't want to get into the difference between, and I don't know the answer to it, but I'm excited to have a conversation with you about it, because I'm sure you've thought about it too, is, what's the difference between jumping on a Zoom call versus recording a video? Why is it so much harder to record a video? Not that everyone has their Zoom camera on, but it's this experience that we have of feeling discomfort, and it's really about risk and uncertainty, and it's ancient, right? Our brains are very, very, very old, and there's different language depending on who you're reading or listening to, but it's like the ancient brain, the lizard brain, the old brain, like whatever, and it really drives so much of our decision making. The kind of the rational, I'm air quoting, evolved aspects of our brain are really they take so much more energy to turn on and engage that our default operating situation is kind of immediate gut feeling, and that's our old brain. And so the fear and judgment are related to the idea that if we were rejected, let's say 1,000 years ago, we'd probably die. We're a social species. If we were judged and rejected by our peers, our tribe, whatever language you want to use, we would die wherever we lived, on the mountainside, in the desert, in the forest, whatever. And that's still with us today. And so even people who are listening or watching and are like hardcore, type A, go-getter, pedal to the metal, badass people, they still fear judgment and rejection. They still dislike that uncomfortability. They dislike emotional exposure. And the weird thing and crazy thing is that when we can live in that uncertainty and emotional exposure, when we can be comfortable with it and record the video and send it anyway, that is an invitation for other people to truly connect with us. And if we do not extend that invitation, it becomes so much more difficult to actually connect with other people. So we hide behind this cloak of digital anonymity. We hide behind our 1 or 2 or 3 paragraphs of text, and we feel safe in it, but we're missing opportunities to truly connect with other people.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing that I've always noticed, right? When I let my guard down and let myself be seen as I really am, right? My guest bedroom, a hoodie, like totally, unprofessional, relaxed self. And in a video, when I introduce myself to someone on LinkedIn, for example, it's very rare that people don't respond back with some almost like equal level of vulnerability of their own, right? Because yeah, when you show up and let yourself be seen as you are, you're letting your guard around them. That tells them that it's comfortable for them to let their guard down around you. And right away, you've gotten to like a hallmark or a milestone of human relationship, which is really significant, right? The mutual letting down of guards in relationship is huge. And you've gotten to that point, in your first email. Like, it's huge.
Yeah, I mean, that's the foundation of trust. It's this, oh, you are as you are. Oh, okay, I can be as I am. And it's so funny. I think, fortunately, someone like Brene Brown can be published as a business author, right? So she took all of her best ideas and, turned them into more of a business oriented book. And she's been hired by Fortune 50 and Fortune 500 companies to speak. And so, you have themes like these: vulnerability, authenticity, human, some of these words that have really bubbled up into popular business culture and popular business language. And I think it's a really, really positive thing. And that goes back to where I started, which is this idea that I know it's intuitive, but I'm very confident in the idea that when more people can get comfortable doing this, our lives and our businesses will be better. And it's for exactly what you just offered there, is that we will be inviting people into conversation and opening this door that we've become so comfortable with being closed, because it's easier, right? It's easier to kind of close ourselves off a little bit, keep our own stories in our heads, feel like we're protecting ourselves. And that's all we're doing, is protecting ourselves and protecting our egos, rather than being open and risking judgment, risking rejection, perhaps, which, certainly for the sales folks watching or listening, you're much more comfortable being rejected than the average person within your organization. But it's so much easier and more comfortable to kind of keep ourselves closed off a little bit, to retain like dramatic levels of control over how we express ourselves online. And of course, you got Instagram filters, or you can edit your photos. You can choose which photos to post and which ones not. You can shoot the selfie 18 times so that you can put up the very, very best one. You can cut and paste and copy and move around and rewrite any of the text that you're posting. Like, we have such an insanely high level of control over our digital lives. And we have, since we've had digital lives. It gives us a lot of control before we click post, or whatever button it is, share. And so that shift is one that I think we're operating from a little bit of a hole on, because and when we think, again, none of this is conscious, but when we think digital communication, when we think about these digital channels, we're so accustomed to having control over everything. And what we need to do here in the style of video communication is just relinquish control. And so if this was part of the digital experience from day one, then it wouldn't be as challenging. And that's why I think we're digging ourselves out of a hole here, is because we're operating against, I don't care how old you are, if you're listening to a show like this, I'm going to assume you're at a minimum a young professional, and you're probably a digital native at the youngest end of this. In your early 20s, let's say, and that's all you've ever known is complete control over how you express yourself in almost all your communication, right? If you're me and you're in your 40s, you've worked over a wider period of time, and you did do more in person. You did do more kind of hand to hand compared to someone who came up completely digital. But that control issue is a big part of the issue.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting lens on it, but you're right. There's a lot less control in the world of video. And I think that's people who are unwilling to relinquish that control, right? That's when we see the people re-recording the video 18 times, right? Because they want to get every element correct. And when element falls out of place, they got to redo it until they get it right. I think we should touch on what you brought up there, which, is why is pre-recorded video, a video email, a video voicemail, right? A video message like that, or even a video you record to publish on LinkedIn or something, but something that's pre-recorded and then shared after. Why is that so much more difficult than live video, such as being on a Zoom meeting room? I would maybe even throw that in the same bucket as, like, there are people I know who are comfortable speaking on a stage in front of 500 people, but aren't comfortable sending a video email to one person, right? And it's this, like, why is live easier than pre-recorded? Do you have any theories on that? I know I got some, but
yeah, absolutely. I think, you and I have both been through enough in our careers that we've been in those moments where, like, in a live moment, whether it's in an interview, or whether it's in a conference room, or whether it's on a Zoom call, like this live moment, we're like, oh, gosh, I wish I had kept that to myself, or, I wish I had said that a little bit better or a little bit differently. And we have those moments, right? But we don't dwell in it because you have to move on. The circumstance calls for you to move on. You have to move on, which doesn't mean that you just like bury it and move on. Maybe you talk through it or whatever, depending on what the instance is, that little, but the circumstance calls for us to continue moving. Whereas with a video, you're recording your video, you maybe have this moment in your head and you're like, I wish I had said that better, right? Now you're conscious, but you're still speaking in the video, et cetera, or you just straight derail and abort and start it over completely. But regardless, when you have this 37-second or 68-second or 124-second video recorded, the other dynamic in play is that you can watch it back. And so you can judge every single frame, and out of protection for yourself, you can judge every moment and every look away, and restating yourself and gathering your thought and the ums and whatever. And you can judge it all over again, and then come up with reasons to protect yourself and reject it and re-record and try to do it over again. So I really do think that playback piece and this opportunity to filter and protect and control. And I mean, by control, and now we're at this point of like choking the life out of our messages by over controlling. And I think that's one of the reasons that you see much higher engagement on some of these slightly more honest. I think it's at this point now, I feel like it's being manipulated a little bit on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, this kind of, like, I call it fail porn, where people are just so grossly overt about, and some of it's honest and some of it's sincere and some of it's fantastic. But I think regardless of the motivation, I wouldn't judge anyone's motivation on it. I take that back. I just did. Not in particular, but I feel like some of it is not as honest and forthright as it was, when it really started coming up maybe a couple of years ago, let's say. Regardless, those are those same invitations in, those are the same situations where you drop the gloss and polish and you just get real with people. There's a vulnerability there. There's this potential for judgment and rejection. And so, even in text, this ability to like let go of control is an invitation to participate. And so I think I think everything we're talking about is in play when we talk about live versus recorded. And it really comes down to this ability to um, play back, judge, and protect ourselves by controlling exactly what happens and exactly what doesn't. And the failure part of that is it's the pursuit of perfection, which is absolutely unattainable. And it's just a fool's errand.
Yeah. Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that, right? Being forced to move on versus being allowed to dwell on it, right? I think is a big part. Because yeah, I've noticed that, right? I make mistakes, and I started doing LinkedIn Live recently. I make mistakes in LinkedIn Live, but shoot, you just kind of move on,
Right.
Or again, on a
You don't have
sales
a
call,
choice. Yeah.
yeah, on a sales call on Zoom, you trip on your words, you just got to move on. Where again, you're pre-recording something for a LinkedIn post, you have the opportunity. I'd add to that too. There's another part that is part of my theory of why it's different. And this actually kind of came from an interview I did with a guy named John Scott on this show a while back. He's like a voice coach. And we talked about some of the techniques they use for singers to get them to perform optimally. And they talk about how there's, when you're engaged in a task, such as singing or recording a video, or even athletes for that matter, the primary bandwidth of your brain is eaten up in just performing the task. But there's always this sub category that's running at the same time. And what that sub feed is doing is really important, because if you're not careful, that sub feed the whole time is going to be focused on you and how am I doing? How am I sounding? How am I coming across? Did I do that right? And that is very destructive, right? That really, really inhibits the main flow of focus on the task at hand from functioning properly. He said that when he works with a singer and they get done with a piece and he asks them, how did you do? The answer he's looking for is, I actually have no idea. I was just so focused on what I was doing that self-monitoring track just was quiet. And one of the techniques they teach is you want to find something else to focus that subtrack on other than yourself. And what I've found is that when you're in a live event, whether it's on stage or in front of Zoom or whatever it is, there's another person to kind of focus that subtrack on, right? That part of your mind can be focused on monitoring the person there. How are they responding? How are they engaging? Are they looking at me? And even if you're not monitoring their body so much, just thinking about how are they receiving this? Is this making sense to them? Is this what they need to hear? And all of that's those subtitles are focused on the other person. When you're doing a video that's just yourself, there's nothing else for those subtitles that subtitles
Man,
are
that
focused
is
on other than protecting
so
yourself.
good. Yeah, that is so good. It's, we are a social species. One of the slides I like to offer came out of a piece we wrote in Rehumanize Your Business, which is about this style of video. And it's just about how long humans have been communicating through the spoken word face to face. And, the estimates there's very dramatic range. I landed at the conservative end of about 150,000 years. And, we've only been capturing our phonetic sounds and sharing them with one another in the written word for about 5,000, but most of us were illiterate until about 500 years ago. So, at minimum 300 times the experience of doing this, eye to eye, face to face, writing emotions to our faces and writing emotions through our bodies. And you, as the person communicating with me directly, interpreting those, reading those, experiencing them. And in general, we all do it pretty well. And across societies and cultures and languages, we all express our emotions through our faces the same way. And so when I make that argument, or I offer that as an interesting piece of kind of science and history, the implication is that there's this give and take. But what you've offered here is really, really interesting to me, and I had not considered it, which is how unnatural it is for us to behave in a social way independently.
Yeah.
Independent of the other person, independent of the audience, and independent of a direct feedback loop. I definitely agree that feedback loop is part of it. I guess it's one of the reasons. So the way I coach people out of this, now that I'm piecing it together, because you offered me something new here through, did you say John Scott?
Yeah, John Scott.
Cool. I have to check that one out. Typically, and I'm sure you've done the same, I'm coaching people to focus on the other person, right? The more you make it about you, the less effective you're going to be, because you care about you way more than anyone else cares about you. People care about you in terms of, even in a healthy relationship, there's a potential kind of transactional piece of it underneath there. It now may be secondary, but in general, we're engaging with people not purely out of, at least in a business context, what brought us together is some kind of business related opportunity.
Hmm.
And we may become friends and take it outside the bounds of that. But, most of our relationships in a business context are oriented toward there's a transactional element to it. Whether or not that's foremost or tertiary is to be decided on a case by case basis. But the more we can think about the other person, the better off we're going to be, because each of us cares not purely about who the other person is, but there's part of us that's also related to what are we doing here together, and what is my side of it? What do I need to put in? What do I get out? What is my risk here? Do I trust the situation? And there is a value calculation there as well. So I think if your default is what's in it for the other person as you're recording these videos, that could potentially occupy that subtrack a little bit more, in the absence of the best use of it, which is for anyone performing at all. And we're all kind of performing, we're all kind of on stage, whether it's formally a stage and we're singing or acting or dancing or whatever, or we're on the stage in a conference room with other people. That subtract to your observation or to John's is that it can be devoted to reading the room and adjusting on the fly, and that's part of that millennia of human brain training and social experience. So anyway, that's just a monologue inspired by a really interesting idea of this free capacity and this subtract, and how we can get in our own heads versus escape them.
Actually, you added just a slight layer there as well. It's the subtract developed evolutionarily as a way to monitor the audience, monitor the heck out of the audience, because they only give you minor cues and you got to pick up on those minor cues. So the fact that in absence of the audience, that subtract turns around back on us and monitors the crap out of every little movement in our body isn't an accident. That's actually what it's supposed to do, is to monitor minor cues of body language and analyze and notice the crap out of the smallest things. It's actually supposed to do that. It's just supposed to do that on the other person. And in this modern world, it has nowhere to go but to turn around on us. So that subtract isn't accidentally doing what it's doing. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to doing. Again, it's just supposed to monitor other people with that kind of scrutiny. Instead, it turns around on us.
And we're our own harshest critic under all circumstances anyway.
That's
cool. So it's especially dangerous.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I'm going to give some thought to like how to change that, right? Similar to you, right? I've given people the advice: picture the person you're speaking to, visualize the person you're speaking to. Some people have gone so far as, if you're doing a computer, pull up a photograph of one of your customers who may realistically ask you this question one day and speak to that photograph, right? But I wonder if there's anything else that can be done to, again, take that subtract and do something useful with it rather than it turning around back on yourself. Give it something else to monitor, right? That's not you.
Yeah. And so I think, the way out of this is, of course, practice. The more, the 12th, 15th, 18th video, you'll be much more comfortable than the second, third, or fourth. And, if you start in low threat environments with people and who know you, this could be family or friends. It could be team members. It could be, again, some of those customers that have, the relationship's gone far beyond the business boundary and you're actually friends. We work with a lot of people that would say that about a lot of their customers. And so when you start in this much warmer situation, A, you're going to be a little bit more comfortable. B, it's much easier to picture the other person, whether or not you're doing it consciously. I think that's probably a helpful element. And then you get that closed loop, that feedback that you need to say, I am good enough. I do look okay. I do sound okay. I can do this. This is different and better than what I was doing before. All those things that we need to hear, that affirmation comes back in terms of replies and responses. Whereas, if you're a BDR or an SDR and you're doing a lot of cold outbounding, you're going to hear no and get out of my inbox and get off my phone, no matter how good you do. And so that's not the best place to start with this in general, because you're not going to get the positive feedback that you need so that you can train that internal track to speak more positively, right? Like there's an affirmation process, whether you're specifically listening to and speaking back to that internal voice, or whether you're just like letting the process of practicing, sending, even though you're not comfortable with it, getting, your brother or your aunt or your longtime customer or your team member to send you, oh my gosh, it was great to see you, or that made my day, or, you turned my week around, or that is so helpful. Thanks so much for taking the time to record that video. Like all the things we know people hear when they communicate in this more personal and human way. I think that retunes that internal track to something more constructive and positive, because we have more feedback from the audience that we're reaching out to. And so the challenge here, this is when I talk about people quitting before they ever start in earnest, which is to say, I recorded 2 videos. I may or may not have ever sent them, and I quit before I ever started in earnest with the story that this isn't for me. This isn't something I do. I am not the kind of person who does this. And it's because they never escaped that internal track and that fear of judgment and rejection. When in fact, you're only 5 or 8 sends away from starting to like just shift the situation a little bit, shift the momentum, shift the story, shift the track, or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned something there that came up in some of the early interviews I did for this podcast with people that I didn't quite expect, right? That's kind of one of those deeper layers that I alluded to earlier in one of my first questions. The discomfort people feel with camera, again, isn't just about don't like the way I look and sound. A lot of things came up where people are basically saying some variation of, who am I kidding? I'm not one of the video people. I'm not a video person. This isn't me. They have this idea in their mind of what type of people use video. And then they look at themselves and go, yeah, I'm not that type of person, right? So it's almost this like kind of an identity thing, right? Where it's like, who am I kidding? I'm not some 22-year-old Instagram star. I'm a 55-year-old man, right? Like, who am I kidding? This isn't me. This doesn't feel right. This isn't.
Well, and it's interesting. That's one of the reasons we generated this language of relationships through video, this casual conversational style, versus marketing through video. Now that line is a little bit too crude. LinkedIn Live falls somewhere in between. But you're right. You may not have the personality to pull off a YouTube channel if your goal is to monetize it and to generate, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and to be able to get paid on ads or even product placement in your videos. You're right. You may not have the personality or charisma to pull off a 90-second homepage video to represent an entire company and its product and its service and its team and its customers and its problems and its opportunities, et cetera. That may be true. What we're talking about here, though, is not, can I carry a stage? Can I carry an important video for a large anonymous audience? Can I carry a YouTube channel? Can I carry a live show for 35 minutes? And again, I would say, a podcast conversation like this falls somewhere in between. So it's not a fair line, but I think when people tell themselves this isn't for me and I'm not an air quote video person, they're thinking about television. They're thinking about movies. They're thinking about TED Talks. They're thinking about YouTube influencers and Twitter influencers and Instagram influencers, whatever. They're thinking about these bigger, larger stages and audiences and anonymous viewing and all of this stuff. And I think it's just, again, a protective thing to throw up in front of ourselves, because this opportunity is truly for everyone. If you are working in a professional capacity and you've had any degree of success at all, for example, getting hired. If you've been hired, congratulations. You're a relatable person. And that all that's required, if you're dynamic, awesome. But all you really need to succeed with this style of video is to be relatable, which all of us are. That's the fun thing about it. And so whether you're a reserved, highly analytical, data-oriented person that, again, wouldn't have a big enough personality to carry a YouTube channel or a homepage video, no problem. That's not what this opportunity represents. This represents an ability to have people feel like they know you, for you to be able to save some time by talking instead of typing, doing maybe a screen recording video, going through a report so people don't just understand the numbers, but they understand the story behind the numbers, that you can use your expertise and your, again, relatability, your expertise, your sincerity, your enthusiasm, all of these wonderful, rich elements that you have, even if you're a soft-spoken, slow-spoken, analytical type of person, that like you can carry this style of video as long as you're, doing it in order to connect with people, help people, educate people, et cetera. And so this I'm not a video person, it's kind of real, but I think people are throwing barriers up in front of themselves that don't really exist. And I think it's largely protective. And there's misunderstanding too. This is a nuanced approach to video, right? This is not about generating tens or hundreds of thousands of anonymous views and likes and comments on your video. This is about
Yeah.
reaching out to those three people that you're working on this project on, because it's better if you say it in person.
Yeah, it's cool. Well, you and I could talk for days on these topics. So we'll go ahead and kind of wrap up now. In closing, though, what kind of advice can you give people if they want to get more comfortable on camera and they want to get to the point where they look less awkward when they're on camera? What are some steps people can take?
Yeah, I think I'll just go back to where I was before. I think the number one most important thing is practice. And I know that's easy to say, but I want to be clear that when I say practice, I don't mean act like you're recording a video. Although some people might find that kind of exposure type of therapy helpful, like open up a video camera and just look at yourself. And that may be helpful for some people, but I don't think it goes far enough. I'm like this, like rip the Band-Aid off kind of a thing. And so I don't mean act like you're recording a video, and I don't mean record a video, but don't send it. I mean, think of family members, friends, coworkers, close customers, etc., and reach out with a simple message of thank you or good job or congratulations, something that's really easy to say. I just noticed that, or I've been thinking about you. Like just reach out as you would if you were going to write the person a handwritten note, and send 3 or 5 of them. You'll get comfortable looking the camera in the lens and talking to people. You'll get comfortable with whatever software you're using to do it. And again, you'll get more replies and responses than you would if you're just kind of reaching out cold into a prospect community, or, putting a random video up on LinkedIn and you're just hoping to get all these likes and comments. It's like that's a little bit too high a bar, I think, and you're not going to get the feedback you need to start getting comfortable. And again, to reorient your track and to get out of your own head. And so I say start by actually sending videos to make it easy and fun, and to get the replies that are going to validate the effort and let you know that this is different and better. Start with people you know and who know you, with easy messages based on things that you know or things that you're seeing in social media feeds or whatever, and make it positive.
Cool. Yeah, I would absolutely agree with all that. So thank you for your time, Ethan. Now, for people, who want to start using video messages, right, there's various ways they can do it. The LinkedIn mobile app, for one, has a way you can add a video right to a message, and that's a great way to start. But you're always going to be a little bit limited. That's why, even after I stopped working at BombBomb, I kept using the BombBomb software tool. So let people know where they can go check out BombBomb. The other thing, too, is I noticed for both of us, hang on, my goodness. It's this dry air here in Colorado. For both of us, mine's a little bit smaller and harder to see, but in the up on my bookshelf, there's a few of those Rehumanize Your Business books. You got a nice stack of them there. So I think that'd also be a good place for people to start if they want to use video in a little bit more of a casual basis, like you mentioned, right? Less of a YouTube channel and more of a conversation. So how can people check out a free trial of BombBomb, and how can people find the book if they want to read the Rehumanize Your Business book?
Cool. Thank you for asking. Yeah, it's just BombBomb, the word bomb twice, BOMB.com. You can learn more about the service. As you mentioned, 2-week free trial. It's a truly free opportunity to get in there, try it out, get a little bit comfortable, and again, reach out to people you know and who know you as a means of getting started. And it costs you nothing for 2 weeks, and you can send as many as you want. And Rehumanize Your Business is, of course, you can find that at Amazon or wherever you want to buy books, just called Rehumanize Your Business, or you can check it out at bombbomb.com/book.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks so much for your time, Ethan.
Yeah, thank you.